So I know it's hard to believe, but back in the day, people didn't actually have cell phones or computers, and we utilized things called maps. Now, I realize I'm using a computer here and using a program called Google Maps, but the same concepts will apply. So, if you wanted to ever look at a map and say, how far were things apart from each other, you would have to use these things called scales. If you look in the bottom right hand corner here, you'll notice that there's a certain line with a number next to it that tells you that a certain distance on the map represents a real distance in real life. In this case, it looks like whatever that line is, I'm not sure what it is. If you had a ruler, you could say it, but that line is equal to about 2 miles. Now, if you notice, I've set up this map to outline a path from here to the Bellagio. So how would I find the distance if I were using a real map? Well, I'd start at the school, and I'd draw the shortest path from here to here, and then I'd draw another line from that second point up to the Bellagio, give or take. Now, I would then use the scale that's in the bottom right-hand corner after measuring those lines to figure out approximately what the distance was based upon that scale. Luckily, we have technology, and Google Maps was able to tell me here that based upon the scale, 2 miles to whatever the length of this line is, the distance shortest, give or take, from our school to the Bellagio is about 11 miles. That's good news because after school I want to take my wife out for a fancy dinner and I'm told the steak cannot be beat. But let's move on, shall we? Now we're going to look into the book and see exactly how to do these problems. If you haven't already, please turn to your book to page 105. Now what you're going to see on page 105 is this example of the Green family taking a trip from Boston to the Statue of Liberty. That's Boston, Massachusetts on the East Coast down to New York City. I actually went to college in between there. It's beautiful country, and the drive is spectacular, but I digress. Now, they have this line underneath it. It says that 1 inch and is on the top, and if you look on the bottom, it's got this 0, this 50, this 100, and we're told that that is the distance in real life in miles. What this means is that on the map that the Green family is using, 1 inch is equal to 100 miles. So if you were to measure out 1 inch on the road, give or take, it'd be about 100 miles. Now, how do we represent that distance? Well, it turns out that we can use our old friend ratio. And the ratio that we're going to use is 1 inch to 100 miles. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what the heck does this have to do with finding distances on a map? Well, if we take a look at, for example, number 1, we want to write a proportion to find the number of miles from Boston to Philadelphia in the distance, if the distance, rather, measures 3.08 inches on the map. So what we can do is use our scale, 1 inch to 100 miles, and we're going to write a proportion. Remember that a proportion is setting two ratios equal to each other. So we're going to start with the ratio we know, 1 inch to 100 miles. And we're going to set that equal to the values that we know, keeping our units consistent. We want to know how far is 3.08 inches on the map. So in the top, I put 3.08 inches, and in the bottom, X miles, because that's what I'm looking for. How many miles? Now, to solve this, we're going to use our old friend, the cross product. The cross product means that we are going to multiply the values from the numerator and the denominator on opposite sides of the equation. So in this case, we take 1 inch times x, and on the right-hand side, we're going to have 100 times 3.08. And if you want to avoid confusion between that little dot and your decimal point, put a couple of parentheses around it. Now we're going to simplify both sides of the equation. 1 times x is obviously x. 100 times 3.08 gives us 308. And we've solved for x. Obviously, x is in miles, so we know that our final value, 3.08 inches is equivalent in real life to 308 miles. 3.08 inches on the map is equal to 308 miles in real life. Also note that you could just as easily have solved this using scaling. For example, I could have gone from 1 to 3.08 by multiplying by 3.08. And if I do that to the numerator, I must do that to the denominator. So 100 times 3.08 would give me x equivalent to 308 miles. So cross product's not the only thing we can use to solve this type of problem. Now, these aren't the only type of problems that we're going to see, or that rather you're going to see in the book. Occasionally, you're going to see something where you have to figure out what is the scale of the map given a real-life distance, or IRL, in real life, for those of you who don't text speak. So in number 3, we're given a distance from Boston to New York in real life is actually 216 miles. And in letter A, they're asking us if this distance is represented on a map by 4 inches. In other words, on the map is 4 inches. What is the scale that's used in the map? Well, remember that the scale here is inches to miles. So we're going to set up a ratio using what we know. In this case, on the map, it's 4 inches. In real life, it's 216 miles. So 4 inches to 216 miles will give us a reduced ratio, and I'm going to leave that to you as an exercise. Were you able to get it? You should have come out to 1 inch equal to about 54 miles in real life. Now, sometimes you're also going to get a question like letter B, which is if you have a scale in real life, or rather on the map, that is inches to miles, equal to a specific scale, in this case that they give you 1 to 50. How many inches on the map would you actually be traveling? And similar to what we did in number 1, we're going to use this scale with the knowledge that we know that's been given to us, the real life distance being 216 miles. So once again, I'm going to use my old friend proportion. I set up my ratio that I know, my scale of 1 inch to 50 miles. I don't know what the inches on the map are, so that's x. 216 miles in real life is what I know, making sure to keep my units consistent. And to solve for this, I use, once again, the cross product. Try it out, see what you can get. Pause the video until you figure it out. Did you come out to x is equal to 4.32 or something similar? I hope you did. Now, for the remainder of class, I would like you to work in your 4 squares. You are going to work on page 105 through page 107. I'll say that again, page 105 through page 107. And in your 4 squares, you're going to complete numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Numbers 1 through 9. Anything you do not complete in class is going to be part of your homework. Your classwork. You're also going to complete page 107, numbers 10 through 16. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'm easily reachable. Have a great weekend, kids.